All right, what's up, NHL Nation? Let's get into it. This is going to be your NHL Eastern and Western Conference semifinals prediction review and NHL Eastern and Western Conference finals predictions. So let's get right into it. First, let's jump into my series game predictions. That's my prediction for how many games I think each series will go. After the first round, I was 2-2 in the East and 2-2 in the West both. And in this round, I went and in this round for the Eastern and Western Conference semifinals, I went 0-2 in the East, 0-2 in the West. So obviously that'll bring my total in the East to 2-4 overall, and that'll bring my total in the West to 2-4 overall for the entire playoffs for my series game predictions, which means that'll bring my total to 4-8 for the series game predictions. For my winning team predictions, I was 2-2 in the East in the first round, 2-2. So for my winning team predictions, I was 2-2 in the East in the first round, and 3-1 in the rest, for my winning team predictions, I was 2-2 in the East in the first round and 3-1 in the West in the first round. And in this round, I went 2-0. In this round, I went 2-0 in the East. I went 2-0 in the East, and for this round, I went 2-2. For this round, I went 2-0 in the East and 1-1 in the West for my winning team predictions. Obviously, I got both the Hurricanes and the Canadiens right for the East, and in the West, I got the Avalanche right. And in the West, I got the Avalanche right, but I missed the Vegas Golden Knights and Anaheim Ducks. Obviously, I had the Anaheim Ducks advancing, and it was the Vegas Golden Knights. So you add that to my totals from the first round. Obviously, 2-2 in the East in the first round. This round, I went 2-0. So that brings my total in the East to 4-2 overall for the entire playoffs for my winning team predictions. So 4-2 for my winning team predictions in the East. In the West, that brings my total to obviously 1-1 in this round, 3-1 in the first round. So that brings my total to the West also to 4-2. So 4-2 in the East and 4-2 in the West overall. 4-2 in the East for my winning team predictions, 4-2 in the West for my winning team predictions. So 4-2 in the East for my winning team predictions, 4-2 in the West for my winning team predictions, which will bring my total up to 8-4 overall between the East and West for my winning team predictions. So before I jump into the Eastern and Western Conference Finals predictions, I want to say congratulations out of the East to the Carolina Hurricanes and the Montreal Canadiens for making the Eastern Conference Finals. And in the West, I want to say congratulations. And in the West, I want to say congratulations to the Colorado Avalanche and the Vegas Golden Knights for making the Western Conference Finals. Sorry, I had something on my phone, guys. So obviously, either the Carolina Hurricanes or the Montreal Canadiens will represent the East in the 2025-2026. Either the Carolina Hurricanes or the Montreal Canadiens will represent the Eastern Conference in the 2025-2026 NHL Stanley Cup Championship. And in the West, it will be either the Colorado, it will either be the Colorado Avalanche or the Vegas Golden Knights representing the West in the 2025-2026 NHL Stanley Cup Championship. Obviously, I'm already doing better than I did last year for my playoffs for the NHL. I didn't do series game predictions last year for NHL other than the Stanley Cup Championship. I just predicted who would win each series last year. Obviously, I'm doing better this year than I was last year, because last year for the entire playoffs in the East for the NHL, I went 4-3 through 7 matchups in the East last year. That's what I finished with, a 4-3 record in the East. And in the West, I finished with a record of 3-4 through 7, which put me at which put me at 7-7 through 14 going to the Stanley Cup Championship, which I did get the Stanley Cup Championship right. So I went a total of 8-7 last year. I'm already at 8 wins this year. I'm already at 4 wins in the East and 4 wins in the West last year. So I already did better in the West this year than I did last year. East, I'm right at where I was last year. So I'm either going to stay the same or do one better. And overall, I'm already at 8-4. So unless I go 0-2 this round, unless I go 0-2 in this round, and I go unless I go 0-2 in this round for the Eastern and Western Conference unless I go 0-2 for the Eastern and Western Conference Finals, and I go, and obviously unless I get the Eastern Conference Finals wrong and the Western Conference Finals wrong and the Stanley Cup Championship wrong, I'm already going to do better than I did overall last year. Sorry about that, guys. Anyways, so yeah, gonna be an improvement from last year. By how many games, I don't know. But before I get into my predictions, obviously I'm a sucker in any sport for a team that's never won a championship, or teams that haven't won a championship in a very long time. And looking at where we're at right now, the Carolina Hurricanes have only won one championship. The Carolina Hurricanes out of the East have only won one Stanley Cup championship. The Vegas Golden Knights out of the West have only won one Stanley Cup championship. Also out of the West, the Avalanche have won 3. And out of the West, the Colorado Avalanche have only won. Out of the West, the Colorado Avalanche have won 3. And out of the East, the Montreal Canadiens, obviously, they've won the champ. They've won the. And out of the East, out of the East, the Carolina Hurricanes have only won one championship. Also out of the East, out of the East, the Carolina Hurricanes have only won one championship. Also out of the East, the Montreal Canadiens have won the Montreal Canadiens. So guys, out of the East, the Carolina Hurricanes have only won one Stanley Cup championship. The Montreal Canadiens have won the Stanley Cup championship 24 times. And then out of the West, obviously the Colorado Avalanche have won the Stanley Cup championship 3 times. And the Vegas Golden Knights have only won the Stanley Cup championship 1 time. Now, if you look at who won the most recent, obviously Carolina, the last time they won it, the only time they won it was 2006. So it's been 20 years. The Montreal Canadiens, last time they won it was 1993. So yeah, last time Montreal Canadiens won the Stanley Cup Championship was 1993, which is 33 years ago. Obviously, the Vegas Golden Knights won the Stanley Cup Championship in 2023, so that's only been 3 years ago. And obviously, the Colorado Avalanche last won it in 2022, so that's 4 years ago. So for me personally, I don't know if I'm going to support any of these teams. I'm going to have to probably go with the Carolina Hurricanes because they've only won it once, and they last won it in 2006, so they've been the longest. But let's get into them predictions. Out of the East, we are going to go with the Carolina Hurricanes in 5 games over the Montreal Canadiens. And in the West, we are going to go with the Colorado Avalanche over the Vegas Golden Knights, also in 5 games. So we are going with, out of the East, we're going with the Hurricanes in 5 games. Out of the West, we're going with Avalanche in 5 games. Enjoy the playoffs, boys and girls.